Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and this is Faithful Rattos. So, as you can tell from the title, today's video is a 6-month update on my bioactive soil and sort of how it's been for us and if the rats have enjoyed it and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end I'm going to do some of the upkeep that I do generally once a month-ish, to keep it smelling fresh, to keep it enjoyable for the boys and all of that stuff. So I was nervous, not gonna lie, going into Bioactive. I was nervous about containing the bugs, I was nervous about it having smells, I was nervous about it being easier for them to make a mess with and all of those stuff. And I'm here to tell you now, it was the best thing I could have done. Now I'm really sad that I don't have both groups together and therefore every rat that I have has having access to this base, but genuinely it is one of the best things I could have done for my rats, especially those who like digging. It has given them so many opportunities to dig and tunnel and burrow, and it is just, it makes your day when it happens. And being able to give them such a natural experience for them isn't topped by pretty much anything else in rat keeping. And genuinely, if you already have a deep layer of substrate and a perspex tray, which I think most people do, just go ahead and take the plunge. I really recommend it. And unlike with some other animals where all of the bioactive load is going into the soil, with rats that's just not the case. Most rats anyway, as most rats are litter trained. So the bioactive soil isn't taking most of the load, and therefore I think it's more sustainable than, for example, mice. Now I know that Emiology made a video about how bioactive just did not at all work for her mice, but I think rats are different. I think because rats are litter trained, that the ammonia and everything, the load that the soil gets really isn't that bad, and it works really well, and it just allows them to burrow and have such good fun. I'm going to see if I can pick out some videos and pictures and stuff of their tunnels and them digging, and I'll show you them now. So logistically, the only things, the upkeep of the bioactive soil is so easy that it's actually making me forget to redo the layout of the cage. Normally, with all the cages sort of setups that I've had in the past, it's been the need to change the bedding that has prompted me to change the layout of the cage and things like that. Now, obviously, I will replace items like hammocks and the ropes and stuff when they start to get smelly or dirty. Obviously, I'll do that, but the actual relaying out the cage, I haven't done as much as I had in the past because I haven't been prompting by the base, by changing out the substrate, to do it. And I think obviously that is something that I need to work on, and it's something that I'm going to be trying to get into a better routine of doing. And now that I've got a little bit more cage accessories, it's going to be easier to do. But it's so easy to maintain. Sometimes you have to water it a little bit, especially in the warmer months. Sometimes you have to turn it. But if your rats are doing a good job at digging and tunneling, you don't really need to do that either. You'll have to keep on top of cleanup crew. So I use springtails. I don't use the normal white springtails. I use the tropical grey isopods. And, oh no. We're doing up there, Macca. Oh! Somebody was underneath my bottom! So I use white springtails, tropical grey isopods, and occasionally I'll also use BioBoost in the soil just to help the bacteria be good. I will show you sort of I'm sorry, Osiris, for sitting on you. So yeah, logistically, it hasn't really been that big of an upkeep for me, especially because these boys are excellent tunnelers. But I think for some rats, I think for some rats and those who go through phases of not digging, it does require a little bit more upkeep of turning the soil if they aren't doing it themselves. But usually they are doing it themselves, and usually you won't have to do that. I top up the springtails. I have a culture of springtails and I have a culture of isopods that I top up with every so often. But generally, it doesn't need very much of my help. It does fine. I often will add something to start them tunneling, so some sort of natural fibre tunnel. So I've had seagrass ones and willow ones. I know some people will use sort of like piping, so that doesn't sort of get disintegrated in the soil. I usually will have a piece of cork bark in there just for the isopods and the springtails to hide on. But in general, it works really well. The boys really enjoy it. And if you have a deep perspex space that I think most rat owners at this point should have, and if not will have, you have the means to do it. I don't think it's actually that more upkeep than substrate. I think substrate is much more of an upkeep. I find this top half of the cage much more difficult to tend to because I don't have a perspex tray up here yet. I'm still debating whether I should get one because I'm not planning the cage to be split in a long term situation. But the upkeep of like a small amount of bedding is so much more than a deep layer of just normal substrate, and so much more being a deep layer of normal substrate and bioactive. Like the upkeep on this, it can be a little bit more frequent if you don't have rats that turn it, but turning the soil every few days, if you have to do it, is nowhere near the amount of physical effort that it takes to actually change the bedding. And yeah, I am a huge lover of my bioactive base, so I'm going to go and get the things that I need to give it a little zhuzh to help them out, the bugs, the soil, the rats, all that stuff. And I will film myself sort of doing that bit of upkeep. I'll probably have some rats come and help me while I'm doing it. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just dig around and see if I can take out the things that I've put in there. So there should be, and I think this is it, a piece of cork bark. Don't know how destroyed it is. Was that poo really that bad?
It isn't.
Here is a piece of cork. There are still some isopods on here, so I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to dig around to see if I can find the tunnel that was here. I don't know really what happened to it. It could still be in here, or it could have disintegrated. We will have to see. I think it's probably died. I think it's probably... You need to go up here because you're in the way. I think it's gone. I think it's passed away. The first thing that I'm going to do is water and turn the soil. So I've got a big empty bottle of Pepsi Max, and here is the Bio Boost that I use. So you add a certain amount of water. I just sort of go off of that. I don't worry too much about how much. I don't lick that. I don't sort of worry exactly how much I'm using. I'm just using it to help the soil, really. So I put that in the water. This amount of water probably will make the soil pretty damp, but making it damp makes it easier for them to tunnel in, and generally, especially if it's infrequently, I'd rather be a little overwatered than underwatered, because if it's underwatered, then they are going to be living with dusty soil, which isn't ideal. So we have that. this is food that I use for the isopod, so that we'll get into that in a second. So I am going to make a hole where I'm going to put the cork bark, and this is the enclosure that I have for my colony of tropical grey isopods. I'm just going to take this. No, actually, that's a good point. I'm just going to mix the soil a little bit just to get all of that water mixed through. It wasn't a whole lot of water, so it shouldn't change the sort of dampness very much, but it's always good to just add some more because obviously it's evaporating. These guys do actually need more soil because they do kick it out. So after I've done that little bit of a mix, I'm going to add some of this food for the isopods here. This is just like fish food, so it's really not harmful if the rats eat it. Then I'm going to take this seed pod from inside the enclosure and just sprinkle a few isopods here. The really nice thing about keeping your own colony is that you don't have to continually, you know, buy the little guys. So it's quite helpful. I'm just going to put that on top of them. So the way that I would get some of my springtails in there is I'll just top up their enclosure with a bit enclosure. It's just a plastic tub. I don't know if you can see, but they are jumping around in there, and I'm just going to pour that onto where the cork bark is, hopefully leaving enough springtails and water in there to keep the colony active. Looks like there's plenty. Hey! Looks like there's plenty. So now I will add this tunnel. The other tunnel that I added in last time doesn't seem to be there anymore, which probably means it was destroyed, which is fair enough to the rats. Absolutely fair enough. I'm going to take this out because I don't know where the other end has gone, so we're going to have to look at that in a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the soil and bury this tunnel partially, so this can be a tunnel starter for them. Pack that in really good, just like this. If there's some from back here that I might use, and I might start to dig out from in there just to give them a bit of a start. There are other things that I might use in an enclosure like this, like wooden hides and things like that, but I would keep sort of the expensive stuff that's definitely going to get destroyed away usually. He is in here trying to get to the bugs, so I'm going to find a shovel and I'm just going to cover this a little bit so he can't get to them as well, because we want to give them, we want to give them a bit of protection so they're not all getting eaten. But that's generally how I do the maintenance of this cage, the bioactive soil. Stop. And yeah, that is my bioactive soil. I really like it, and as you can see, my rats really enjoy it too, and I really think it's the most beneficial thing that I could have done for them, and I'm really happy that I did it. So I hope to see you in the next video that I post, and yeah, see you later. Bye!